I say we go ahead and do the call to order and the confirmation of quorum and get the pledge of allegiance and everything on that, okay?
Looks good to me.
So, we'll begin the call to order.
Commissioner Wilson,
Present.
Ackland,
Present.
Burke,
Present.
Castleman absent, Wiggins,
Present.
Hubach,
Present.
Stidham,
Present.
Daring,
President,
Moorhead absent.
let's stand for the pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have you all gone over the minutes for the last meeting?
Affirmative.
I have to recuse myself because I was not here.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Is Derek going to be gone on all the meeting?
Who?
Derek, or is he coming in later?
He
He'll
should
be
be
coming
here
in later.
in a
I
few
was
minutes.
gonna say, if you sat at that chair, I could hear you a lot better.
Maybe that's not gonna make him happy.
It's his fault for being late.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
all right. Well, I moved my name right there too. We just went through the minutes, and like I said, I recused myself since I was not here last time we met. We had a motion and we had approval. On the unfinished business,
What? Hang on, we had a motion and a second, but there was
All in
no.
favor?
all in favor? Okay.
Shit,
It's
opposed.
we-
And then anybody
Are you okay
opposed,
with the minutes?
Anybody against it?
and then I will also abstain due to my absence as well.
Oh, you were absent also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
She did, she raised her hand for.
Are you okay
Okay.
with the minutes?
Yeah.
No, I held up.
She
Oh, I'm
raised her
sorry.
hand.
Sorry.
No, I held up my
Okay.
hand.
It's approved. Okay, we move on to, Article 9, Section 9.4.
Traffic council will be providing information on this issue.
The staff have something to say on that?
Yes, we are happy to provide the staff report. It's my understanding, based upon last week's meetings and my conversation with Ms. Warner, because I had to leave a little bit early, that the commission was looking for information regarding the council wards and what happens when there's a displacement of a council member due to realignment following each decennial census. We have put together some proposed language for your consideration. The way that we have drafted it, I have one additional sentence which addresses council members that are displaced and allows them to serve out the remainder of their terms or until the next regular or special municipal election or until their deaths or resignations. I've added an additional sentence with regard to members of any commission or board that might be appointed to represent individual city council wards who are displaced following the realignment of ward boundaries, and they will serve the remainder of their terms without any further information. I have, for your ease and reference, come for us. Andy, gets one. The red would be new additional language for that for your consideration. That's all the staff has for their report.
And historically, the,
Yeah, that's-
when this occurred 10 years ago, when we did the redistricting, what you see in red occurred, but it occurred by ordinance.
By
By ordinance.
ordinance, okay.
That immediately, in fact, the night of the redistricting ordinances called for, I'll wait until our attorney gets done shuffling around here. The redistricting ordinance actually had two sections below the whereas clauses that said, in essence, what you see here in the red. The consideration that staff thinks the commission may be under is, it is easy enough to simply pass the ordinance the same way we did last time. The flip side of that would be the inconsistency that might be associated with not having it in the charter or not having it in the code, that this is what will occur on a permanent basis.
Well, I think for the benefit of those people that are watching this on TV, we ought to read it. It says, council members displaced following the realignment of ward boundaries shall serve for the earlier of the remainder of their terms or the next regular or special municipal election, or until their deaths or resignations. Members of any commission or board appointed to represent individual city council wards who are displaced following the realignment of ward boundaries shall serve for the remainder of their terms. And that is the addition to 9.4, city council wards. So that will,
Would there be, pardon me, but would there be any other reason for them to be displaced besides the census? Because normally that's what we're talking about now, is displacement be due to realignment because of the council. Well, is there, we didn't talk about if there's a chance if it's some other kind of alignment.
well, what if they moved from one group to another?
That's
That's-
handled in a
that's
different
addressed.
Yeah,
section.
you're giving up
We
your.
did that already.
Yeah, cause I remember did we discuss like a temporary displacement, such as somebody's house burns down while they're in the ward? We've already discussed and handled that.
That was,
in here.
that was extensively discussed
That's
in
what
the
I-
qualifications,
Right.
sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm having trouble with 9.3, we didn't discuss that too much, I don't think, before that. That has to do with the determination of election results, how we go ahead and how we do it.
Hello.
Well, this right now, we're only talking about 9.4 at the moment, though. We need to stay on this topic.
Didn't we suggest adding the words by oath?
By oath.
At the end of the license, just.
Right here, first item under
We had a
unfinished.
bio on 9.3.
You know, for the record. Thank you.
We talked about if they were absent, then they wouldn't be able to do the oath until they attended.
I just wanna make sure we're covered all bases.
Thank you. So since we're on this 6.4 item, 9.4, did I say 6?
Yep.
Now
It's
it's
upside down.
6.4. Have we had reasonable discussion on this? Charlene, you had, I walked in as you were posing a question.
Yes, on the 9.3, there's no point in us having two meetings the same night, having a special meeting and a regular meeting the same night. You just simply, it's not good business, it's not good in Robert's rules, and we need to put something in here to indicate that when they have been taken the oath of office, and they go ahead then and they say, we're gonna have a reception. Instead of adjourning, you recess. And when after a recess, then you come back in, and you have a recess for 10 minutes, 30 minutes, or however many minutes the mayor chooses. And then you come back after that length of time, and you have a check to make sure that you still have a quorum. And then you go ahead and you do the business. That's the way, the normal to do it.
And I totally respect that. That's a very good point, and that will be covered under 5D of our agenda. Because that is not contained within section 9.4.
You
We
don't
will
consider-
address that this evening.
You don't consider that as part of 9.4?
It is not 9.4.
only
So,
on 9.4.
so I can properly catch up to speed here. We had a staff suggested language provided to us.
It
Have
was-
we
it was
discussed
read.
that language?
Yeah, it was read.
No, it
Stephanie-
was read out loud.
Okay,
I read it out loud for the public.
perfect. Thank you very much for that. And so now, do we wish to have discussion on the merit of it? Any discussion?
I'm good with it.
Yep.
I think it looks well.
Entertain a motion to accept the changes?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion and second? Seeing none, all in favor? We now have a new item added to the list. Okay. Finishing unfinished business, moving on to new business. We have under Article 11, financial
Wait, you
procedures.
skipped section, Article
We got 4B.
14.2, concealed weapons. Item B, unfinished business. On the agenda?
I have a different.
I do
I'm
not
looking at
have
a different
an item B.
order. I apologize.
Here, Derek. I think we'll go somewhere else.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on then to 4B. Sorry, now I'm caught up. I was trying to impose the May 2nd agenda.
Oh,
So,
okay, I was in.
moving on to
The
4B,
agenda,
section
sorry.
4, Article 14. Steph?
Staff will reluctantly provide a report, so.
Okay.
It was my understanding, based upon the last meeting, that the inquiry was what the current status of the law regarding concealed firearms is in the state of Missouri. There are recent changes that went into effect as of January 1. Most of those will not necessarily impact with regard to city-oriented buildings. The concealed carry is still prohibited in a number of locations. No person, even a concealed carry permit holder, may carry a concealed firearm. And I'll list a couple of them that are highlights for purposes of our discussion. Into any meeting of the governing body of a unit of local government, or any meeting of the General Assembly or a committee of the General Assembly, except that this shall not preclude a member of the body holding a valid concealed carry endorsement from carrying a concealed firearm at a meeting of the body which he or she is a member. The other provision that we've got in there is into any courtroom or any room or office wherein any of the courts of the state are temporarily conducting any business within their jurisdiction, so those are also prohibited. The last occasion that I'd reference would be, in addition, the General Assembly, the Supreme Court, county, or municipality may, by rule, administrative regulation, or ordinance, prohibit or limit the carrying of concealable firearms by endorsement holders in that portion of a building owned, leased, or controlled by that unit of government, clearly identified by signs posted at the entrance to the restricted area. The statute, rule, or ordinance must exempt any building used for public housing by private persons. I think that addresses back to Councilmember Moorhead's comments from the last go-around. With regard to the changes that have occurred, you currently have language in there that has been adopted by charter, which prohibits the directly or indirectly carry any concealed weapon capable of lethal use onto any portion of a building owned, leased, or controlled by the city of Raymore, or during any meeting of the council or its advisory boards, commissions, or committees wherever they are held. I would posit to you that that is exactly what is referenced with regard to the terms of the statutory provisions regarding the municipality being authorized to pass rules, administrative regulations, ordinances prohibiting the limiting the carrying of it. And follow up, the individuals who are permitted to ask council members or individuals of the legislative body would simply be police officers, and that's pursuant to section 571.121 of the revised statutes of Missouri. I'm happy to provide any additional information you might have questions on.
Okay, I believe that we left our discussion that the general intent or direction we wanted to go was that we merely wanted to replace that entire section with a recognition of whatever the current state law was.
I believe that was right.
Does,
Mr. Wiggins, you looked at, you had a question?
I was trying to follow along with Mr. Zer. At the beginning, when you were, one of the first section that you were reading, did it say something about that essentially council members were exempt from the state law regarding concealed? I'm sorry, could you just kind of go back over that again? I don't know, it kind of caught my attention and then I kind of...
Basically, there are allowances within it for meetings of governmental body units, local governments, that would allow a member of the General Assembly or a committee of the General Assembly, which would preclude the member from being prohibited from it. So in any meeting of the governing body of a unit of local government, or any meeting of the General Assembly or committee of the General Assembly. So, and that would provision provides that the individual who has a concealed carry endorsement could in fact carry that into the meeting if he or she was a member of that body.
So, just for clarification point, so are you saying that a city council member in a city council meeting, if they have a concealed carry permit, is authorized to carry a concealed weapon into a municipal building?
But that is going to be subject to the additional provisions in there for the municipality which is capable of prohibiting. the
Okay,
language for
because
it.
when you first read that, I was just basically saw that
Yeah.
in my head that city council can pack.
We have proposed a prohibition which has been part of our charter at this point, which is an overall prohibition.
Mr. Zer, for clarification then, if we remove the existing language in that charter and just place the recognition of replace it with recognition of just state statute, then in fact, would you not see the interpretation, it could be interpreted that not only can council members, but it says members of any board, meaning this charter commission, any member could carry.
I would agree with regard to the first part of that. The second part of it, it is very specific that it has to be any meeting of the governing body of a unit of local government, or any meeting of the General Assembly or a committee of the General Assembly. So I would not qualify this committee as being a committee of the General Assembly. So you still have that prohibition, but it would probably still qualify for city council members
And mayor.
and mayor.
Okay, Mr. Burke?
I'm gonna show some ignorance on this subject with my question. I know it would also include knives, and there are people that carry knives that like stick out of their pocket in a sheath that goes in, and then there are people that carry knives that have sheaths on the outside because of their work, and then they don't think about taking it off, and then there are other people that have a knife that's in their pocket totally concealed. Are those all considered to be concealed?
No, in fact, your charter has gone beyond that. So your charter has language within that that would say any weapon capable of lethal use,
Okay.
which I think is more encompassing than just a concealed firearm under the provisions of 571.107.
That's what I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
So that's broad enough to, I mean, I think of the incident at UT a few weeks ago where lethal use was done with a knife that is completely concealable within a pocket. You know, I mean, lethal use can be done, so I just wanted to make sure, because following on Mr. Burke's side, I think that's what he's implying, is that you could easily kill somebody with a pocket knife. And obviously, we don't want to go through down to the, oh, your little Swiss Army knife with your nail file on it, level of things. But
I'll set at the Royals game.
just kind of curious.
They do at the circuit court, sir.
Well, which is,
Rainmore Day at the Cave. I had to throw mine in the trash. My Swiss Army knife.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to, you all are talking at the same time and it makes it difficult for me to hear. What I want to know is the final result. Can they or can they not carry a concealed weapon in city chambers? I think the intent of the people was there are several places that they felt should be sacrosanct when it came to having weapons. And one of them was City Hall. They wanted it to be free because people get pretty testy, and we've had some experiences with that, seeing them, they get upset. But if anybody had a weapon, then we weren't sure just how safe they would be. And at the same time, we did not want the council to be able to carry weapons if citizens couldn't carry weapons.
Right. For clarification, for me to answer that, I'm gonna fall back to Mr. Zer. Mr. Zer, right now, even though state law, you read state law, our current section 14.2 subsection 4 is allowed to ban it.
In addition, the General Assembly, Supreme Court, county, or municipality may, by rule, administrative regulation, or ordinance, prohibit or limit the carrying of concealable firearms by endorsement holders in that portion of a building owned, leased, or controlled by that unit of
So,
government.
Ms. Hubach, in short, right now, council members cannot carry concealed into this city building,
Okay,
based on this charter language.
and do we wanna change that?
The question is do we wanna make any changes to this section And obviously, we must be aware of the outcome of that change. And the recommendation at our last meeting was, we remove all of section 4 and basically just make a statement that the city follows whatever the current state law is.
Which would allow council members to carry,
Now,
if they had concealed carry permits.
And would not include any references with regard to other weapons.
But doesn't it also say that the city has the right to go further and to be more restrictive?
yes, the state law does. And that could be done by code.
So we wouldn't have to do it, but that would take a lot of courage on the part of the council.
And this committee, Mr. Stowe.
I left the last meeting, thinking that it was okay because of the new law, whether it was permit or not permit to carry inside City Hall, that the no gun had been taken off of the front door, and that we were allowed, at least that was my understanding, my interpretation of what we talked about at the last meeting.
Good, Mr. Sir?
My only answer to that would be, at this point, you have language within the charter that would prohibit that. The only thing that we would have to do in order to address it would be to place signage up at the city hall regarding that prohibition.
Mr. Wiggins?
I don't know, I watched the video, but I don't recall you guys bringing it up. How does the state law pertain to open carry, which as of January 1 is legal in the state of Missouri? You don't have to be a permit holder to carry a weapon, so long as it is not displayed in an angry manner or whatever. So I could walk in with my AR-15 on my back, but this language and the state language, at least I didn't, not that I caught, discusses that. So do we need to, is that covered somewhere, or do we need to add a note about open carry also being?
The change to the open carry law is in this section of state statute, but the section that we're talking, there's a completely different section for coming into public buildings or courthouses.
Sure.
Which applies to here. The open carry law that you're talking about is.
Walking on the street, going to Price
Walking on the
Chopper or
street,
whatever.
general
Okay,
population, right.
very good, thank you.
So you concealed or open, right now, you cannot walk into this building.
No, right now, no one can walk into no one, council members, elected officials, no one except for police officers or former police officers carrying a 318 permit can walk into this building carrying any kind of a weapon, open or concealed or otherwise.
So if we change section 14.2 subsection 4, that would allow some concealed carry.
That is correct.
Unless the council then votes to add a limitation.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Yes, Mr.
I
Purvis?
just wanted to point out, that's why I made the specific references to a knife completely in your pocket, or partially sticking out of your pocket, or the sheath in your pocket with the handle sticking out. That's why I was trying to give those different scenarios, but we've confirmed that
Okay.
information.
Then would we be allowed to put a sign up in the front doors saying no weapons allowed inside?
Depending on what we do.
Well, I think that was the intent of the people, was that it would be equalized if,
No. Ms. Hubach, please continue. Ms. Hubach, please.
you want what?
Go ahead and continue.
Finish your,
You were speaking.
Keyboard.
Well, I'm just trying to find out exactly what it is, because when it was passed originally, the idea was to have City Hall free from any kind of coercement and then weapons of any kind. Not only to protect the employees, but to protect anybody that was going to come to a city council meeting. And they didn't want to have city council, they didn't want to have citizens carrying weapons inside City Hall. They felt there ought to be some place where people were safe to gather
Right.
and express themselves without having to worry about somebody using a weapon against him. So I think, I don't know whether I'm explaining it to the rest of you, but that is the purpose behind it. We wanna have some place in the city that is safe where you can gather and express your opinion, good or bad.
Right.
And would not have to worry about, being harmed.
I understand. I would point out that that vote was almost a decade ago, and a new vote of the people voted to make a change to be less restrictive more recently. If the council wishes to impose that, the argument here is, do we need 2 layers of regulation on this? The argument is, do we keep it at a charter level and have this restriction stay in place? Or do we merely just state that the charter, that we recognize whatever the current state law is, and then let, on an individualized basis, the council choose to determine what the will of the people is at that time? So, Ms. Hubbard, your concerns can be met. The discussion here is, how many walls do we put up, 1 or 2? So I will go ahead and make a motion to delete section 14.2 subsection 4 and merely replace language that City of Raymore follows the state statute related to concealed carry.
You're asking a lot of the sitting council. That's why I think it'd be better coming from the charter commission than the city council, because they will be feeling the pressure of it, and we already see what happens when people want to
Technically, Ms.
violate
Hubbard,
things.
and I apologize to stop you there. A motion was made on the table. We can't have discussion on that motion.
We haven't had a
It either
second
needs
on
a
it yet.
second or,
I'll second.
okay, so we have a motion, a second. Now we can have discussion, and please feel free to finish your point.
Well, let's see, I'm opposed to having weapons inside of city council buildings, because as I said, there should be some place where people can gather and talk about politics without having to worry about weapons of any kind, whether there's guns, whether it is knives, whether it is whatever it is. I just want City Hall to be safe, and I want the employees to be safe, and not have to worry about somebody coming in. 'Cause when this was originally done, I think it was not Florissant, but Kirkwood, wasn't it? Where someone had come in and had shot the mayor and several of the council members. And rather than go with some kind of I don't know what you would call it, to let people know who's coming in with weapons and who's not. So they decided to go ahead with it on the charter. And we would have gone ahead and put a sign up, but at the time, our legal counsel wouldn't let us do it. He said we couldn't enforce it.
Okay, anyone else wish to speak on this issue? Mr. Burke?
And I certainly don't wanna go against the state statute, are any of these still being, investigated by the court system about their legalities? I mean, I think that would be, if there are still, with the open carry and the concealed weapons, if they are still being interpreted based on this new law that went into effect in January, I think that gives us another reason to simply follow the state statute, because I feel that there will be some edits to the state statute before we convene another charter commission, and that would be a reason to vote to keep it as has been proposed.
Mrs. Darren?
To me, it seems like the state is stronger than the charter.
To some degree, yes. It grants some permission, but there are very expressed restrictions as well.
I think the state seems stronger than this.
Okay,
The state rules are stronger.
that's
From
right.
my understanding, Ms. Hubbard's concern, isn't that addressed by the proposal that you got just read?
To some degree it is. the way I'm interpreting it, Ms. Hubbard, please, I'll do the best I can. She is expressing the philosophy that she is concerned about individuals carrying into the chambers, which still has, the council has the ability to regulate. So her concern can be addressed expressly by the council. This is a larger overriding instruction or declaration. And so the question is, do we allow the council to deal with it directly and remove the ability, because the problem is our language here is somewhat consistent, but somewhat inconsistent with state statute. Now, right now, I wouldn't argue that it was inconsistent enough that we would disregard it, but at the same time, we've made other attempts in other areas to say, we're not gonna nitpick and try to restate, because what, as Mr. Burke brings up, what if there are changes or modifications? We don't wanna have to keep coming in to determine whether sometimes we're valid and sometimes we're not. Why don't we just open it up to where no matter what the state does, short of pure anarchy, we're gonna respect the state law. But since the state gives us the ability to have the council regulate it, let the council do it.
So that's gonna be our recommendation, is we think it should be done, and so we want the council to do it.
Yes, instead of a broader approach, Mr. Wiggins.
Do we have any concern that the council would, I mean, cause if we're leaving it in the hands of, we'll follow the state unless the council says otherwise, do we have a concern that the council would ever say otherwise? Cause I don't wanna give the council the opportunity to say, yeah, let's start, bringing in our SIGs and our Glocks and let's just, cause isn't that what you're saying, is that?
Or the other way.
Yes.
I mean,
We can't go against state statute.
The dilemma becomes that the council makes decisions philosophically based on the will of their voters. If the council were to do that, one of two things occurs. Either the council members are going independent against the will of their voters, or the people want them to carry it in anyway. The question is, does it take the decision-making closer to the individual citizens, or do we leave this at our governing rate at the higher end of the charter? Yes, the reality is, some councils will, some councils won't, but again, that will become a decision factor when you're electing your council members.
And they said it takes courage to do something that's right, even though you know that a lot of people are opposed to it. So that's what bothers me, that I don't,
Right is not, I mean, it's relative to the person, so, I mean, I don't think that right is always black and white.
Well, and the will of the people isn't, I mean, that's one of those catch-22s, because it's the will of the people, especially when it potentially pertains to guns, it's not necessarily the right thing to do. I have guns, I love guns. I think it would be absurd to ever allow anybody, council, mayor, citizens, to carry one inside of this building. And allowing somebody the power to do so, allowing the council to have that freedom, even if it's the will of the people or not, I don't like the idea that we would give them that much power. This isn't the Wild West. This is a fast-growing community. And again, I would love to say and sit here and think that the council would never allow such a thing to happen, but you never know. Worse, crazier things have happened in the great state of Missouri, who loves their guns. So I think it's asinine to think that we would allow the council to make a decision that, oh, it's the will of the people, we're gonna allow the council to start carrying. That's absolutely ridiculous. And leaving that freedom to them, I don't think is appropriate.
Okay, other thoughts? Yes, Mr. Wilson.
If we change this to be compliant with the state statute, are we actively looking at existing city ordinances to become compliant also with those changes?
The city staff is doing a complete review of city code of ordinances at this time, starting at the very beginning and working our way through. I think the most recent section we hit, we are not that far into it.
We're on the police section.
Yes.
So if we pass, if we were to vote and say that we are accepting the state statutes, but it's not a city ordinance in compliance with that, then who is available to enforce that if it was a violation of some sort?
Charter trumps the code at all times.
So who?
Charter trumps the code at all times.
The state
Okay,
trooper
but is it,
charter.
are the police officers, law enforcement of Raymore able to affect a law that's a state law rather than a city ordinance?
Well, it would be, again, that if the charter reflected state law, the police department has every ability, and we would have to bring code into compliance with charter, which is much easier, obviously, to do. So as we go through the code review, if we were to do this to affect the charter changes, then code review would then, if we change the charter and the people voted to change the charter to be in compliance with state statute, city code review would then be, it would be incumbent on the code review group to bring code into compliance with charter, which we're having to do on several sections already. And then the officers, based on either charter or code, would be enforcing the code of ordinances or the city charter, which would be reflective of state statute. It would all just trickle down.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion? 2, 3, 4, all opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. We do not have a mayoral tie on this, so because there is no majority, it fails without a majority. Okay. Any other discussion on section
That means
Article
we leave
14?
it as is.
Well,
Yes.
unless we,
No.
somebody can come,
If we default to the state, that means it defaults to the state, doesn't it?
well, no,
No.
right now,
Defaults
right now, it's,
It is.
it's
We
as it is, so.
We don't
But
default
is
to
it,
the state. The
can
state
somebody
law still
present a
stands.
secondary?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, that's what I mean.
The state law still stands, but we are
Also the charter.
acting counter to state law, but consistent with the ability to counter state law. But we're doing it at a charter level, not at a representative level. Okay,
So, okay. So it stays as of right now, it stays as it's written.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, moving past that to new business, commission review of proposed changes. We have a chart that has been provided by council, or staff, sorry. Lecturing on the law all week. And we have a number of changes. I believe this is the document with the yellow highlighted area. Ms. Warner, I think you're probably the one most in charge of preparing this. We have what, about 17, 18? 25 changes. I don't believe on the yellow form we have the one we just voted on. So that would be the only one left off, otherwise this is a cumulative total. So, progressing with this, the question becomes, as a matter of procedure, I do not want to start over and just literally go item by item, otherwise we are rehashing entire meetings.
Come on.
Yes, thank you.
Trying to put an end to this?
And since I will politely state that this was something that you've been told about for weeks, so I'm actually gonna throw it out as a straightforward to resolve section 5A. Does anyone have any identified changes or removals from this list that they wish to present now? Mr. Stidham.
One that's not on here that in my notes I had that was going to be, would be 4.2B, which is the term of the mayor.
Okay? Do you wanna revisit the 4.2B?
I think it's good that we do, yes.
Okay, since that is technically not a change of the ones on the list, I'm gonna make a recommendation. Ms. Hubach, you were wanting to talk about section 9.3. How about we, if we want some additions or kind of rediscuss issues, can we put them on one plate? And then that way, the ones that are here, we decide whether to remove or keep, and then we have individual discussions of the others. So we don't, otherwise we'll duplicate some. Are there any additional items that anybody feels needs to be rediscussed? Mr. Stidham?
I'm looking for it right now, it's not on here either. We took a vote on it, I believe, the last meeting, which is the 6 month after an election and the
Yes.
6 months before the term expired and the 2-year term of city council.
Which is what number?
I'm looking for that.
Okay, sorry.
The one
I
that
have
Mr. Westcott
a
was
question
there.
about the process that we're going through on this.
Ms. Hubach?
My question on this would be, can we put things in like order? I mean, if it has to do with the mayor, for instance, let's look at all of the things having to do with the mayor and see what changes we want to make. If it has to do with the council, can we consider all council? Can we do all that rather than just pick and choose certain ones? I'd like, because when we present it to the voters, we're gonna have to decide whether we want to present it with 2 or 3 items all in one question, or whether we're going to do each question separately. And so I think we need to make sure that we're covering all the bases on that. That's kind of the way I think, Stephanie, that you've done it in the past, hasn't it?
Ms. Hubach, I'm trying to conceptualize what you're saying. Okay,
He's got it.
that, I just wanna clarify what you're saying then. You're saying you wanna go through each of these, all of these are going to be presented to the voters individually, not in one single question.
Oh, you're not gonna join some of them together, like for instance, there's 4 or 5 places where it says the mayor doesn't have the, what is it? That the council will make the final decision rather than the mayor on something. And there's 3 or 4 different places where it says that. So rather than doing separately, you say everywhere where they're making make the recommendation that is now be changed. That's what we did when we were making some of the other changes the last time. You gathered some like ones.
Okay,
together.
Mr. Zer, could you get us past this?
Happy to do so. The answer is going to be, it will go on the ballot. Each one of the proposed changes will be a different vote that will need to occur. Lee Summit just recently did theirs. They had 12 ballot items that they voted upon individually each time. It was not just here's a single ballot question to amend the entirety of the charter.
And if I could dovetail onto that very briefly, staff has attempted in the yellow sheet that you have in front of you to actually consolidate as much as we can. Right now, you would be looking at 26 ballot measures.
The notion being, of course, if you made multiple changes within a single section, we went ahead and included that section as much as we could as a single ballot change.
Okay, Mr. Stidham, I believe 10.1C is
It is.
actually in the list there,
Yes, it
but
is.
thank you for bringing that up, because no apology needed. That was actually something that I was
I
gonna
will show you,
work
this is
with.
the Lee Summit ballot, for their charter. This is how they've got it. Here's the question, and then they may have each one of the items underneath it. And here's the question, and then there's an item. There's a question and each one of the items underneath it. And that's how they do it.
Do
Okay.
they, do they mail that out to their citizens?
No, this is how they go and vote for it. They mailed this out to my,
Yes,
this is
that
how
was
my
mailed.
mother.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
So I was just curious if
They mail
that's
this out,
distributed.
They can look it over before they vote.
Sure, thank you.
And it's
All
probably
right.
a good thing we do that too.
Is there any other basically unaddressed issues that we want to go back and discuss that are not included in our list of 25? Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to section 4.2B. Regarding the election and term, the mayor shall be elected by the qualified voters of the city at large to serve a 3-year term. I believe there was significant discussion on this. I don't remember the exact terms of the discussion, how we voted on that, but I will say, Mr. Stidham, what did you want to raise on that?
Well, I was looking at the notes here. I just think it's important to the city that the mayor is on a 4-year term, regardless of who the mayor is. I think that there's so much economic development, partnering, other commissions and community and state-related groups that the mayor is involved in. When we're growing, and we're expecting to grow the rate that we're gonna grow in the next 10 years, and we're looking at this at 10 years, I think the mayor needs to be a part of everything. I mean, I think we're disarming him or her in their endeavors. When I hear, and I've got it written down, when the best reason we've got is that if you're a sitting city council member, the 3-year allows for a city council member to run and not vacate their seat. I don't care about the sustainability of the city council member, to be quite honest. In the big picture of this, we need the development, we need the rooftops, we need the infrastructure, and that 4th year on a 3-year term could be the difference as to whether or not we get it.
How?
I'm sorry?
Hold on, whoa.
Okay,
Oh,
all right,
no,
all
I'm
right.
glad to answer.
Okay,
No,
I'm sorry,
do it
that was,
way.
I'm sorry.
I want you
I
to be able
apologize.
to give your complete point. Then when we open it up for discussion, then I'm gonna let each person talk. I don't wanna create a.
Yeah.
I apologize.
So please, Mr. Stidham, continue.
I don't remember what I was saying.
Oh, no.
Well,
You were talking about the rooftops
I
and how
think
4
that-
years.
talking about the rooftops.
Yeah.
If you get involved in a project with Mark, or MoDOT, or somebody like that, and you're being instrumental, you're an active participant, when you carry the clout that obviously in the future, present and in the future, a mayor's gonna have to get elected in this community, growing as it is. It has been my experience that when you go into these outside groups, you're respected, and you can, because of who you are, you can work with people to get things in. You can help grow the infrastructure of the city. And that extra year, if we look at being able to recall somebody 6 months into a job because they haven't achieved the level of performance that needs, we're telling ourselves right then that our people should be involved in things and hit the ground running, and it doesn't always happen like that. But that 4th year could be the difference. What if somebody was elected or came in the beginning of that 4th year that had a different agenda? And we really were looking to gain infrastructure, anything that enhances our quality of life as a community. It could go away. And I think that if the best that we have is the preservation of, let me just say, I don't think that the reason given in that meeting was good enough to not do it. Yes?
Okay. Are you done, Mr. Stidham?
I am.
Okay, Mr. Wiggin.
Well, I remember that because I was one that was kind of thinking that 3 was too short, and I definitely remember from that conversation that the problem with a 4-year term, the reason that we have the 3-year term is more or less to prevent a group, not as much the vacating a seat as much as it's having a group of council members running for re-election at the same time as the mayor and kind of creating and forming a group. At least that was kind of what I remember, that you potentially have the mayor and his buddies that are kind of constantly on the same little loop cycle, and so by doing every 3 years, you're alternating Group A, Group B, Group A, Group B. So I recall that, and if my memory is a little fuzzy, somebody correct me on that. Because I agree that it would be nice to have a longer term. I think I even quoted 5 years because that would allow for the AB, but also it would prevent somebody some jackwagon who thinks that he could be a mayor. He'd be like, oh, 5 years, I'm not willing to commit to that. But we also decided some strong people might not commit to that. But at the same time, lastly, my last main point for this was, I believe I inquired, other than a mayor resigning or being recalled, have we had multiple mayors that had multiple terms? And the answer was a pretty quick yes. So if you're a good mayor and you've got great infrastructure programs going and great business development, what's the likelihood that somebody's gonna unseat you? I mean, unless there's some sort of controversy or whatever, but if we have a mayor that's putting up rooftops and filling parking lots with shoppers and new businesses, it's a walk in the park. Somebody probably isn't even gonna run against them because they know they're gonna get slaughtered. So that 3-year term becomes a 6-year because it's back-to-back terms. And so, I don't know, I kind of understand the idea, and that's kind of what I took away from it. And I don't know if that helps jog your memory on some of the conversation, but.
Mr. Burke?
I have two separate comments. One, it seems to me that in this discussion that we're giving more credence to the mayor than to the council, and we are not that type of government. The way that decisions get made, and that can be debated or not. But then the second part is, this is just a side anecdote. There's a town in Cass County where they have, and maybe there's multiple towns like this, I'm not sure, but I've had discussions with a group of elected officials where they have 4-year terms, the mayor and the council, and their comments at different things were like, well, we don't have to worry about it, we just got reelected, we don't have to do anything for 3 years, because they can't do a whole lot about it. And I thought to myself, that, to me, was very distasteful, and I was glad that I wasn't a resident in that town.
I'd like to go ahead and comment if I could, just to keep things going around, since I was actually the one that brought up the issue of when things fall into cycle. That's actually wasn't an important issue to me. It may have been what was notable in our notes, but that's not actually the big key here. I'm kind of non-committal to the idea in general, and the reason being is this. Respectfully, I've seen instances where it's played both ways. And I think the 3-year term is somewhat arbitrary in the sense that there could be rationale to decrease it to 2. There could be reason to increase it. But here becomes the reasons. The good reason to expand it is this. If you have a good mayor, we want to keep you longer. If we have a bad mayor, we want to get rid of you sooner. And there's equal value to both of those arguments, in my opinion. Now, I will say, because we are a council-strong form of government, candidly, the mayor does not actually determine rooftops or businesses. They don't possess the authority to, other than being a figurehead only. Now, they play a factor, because if you have a good, strong figurehead, that gives a good impression. If you have a good, strong mayor who attends things and participates, then obviously that assists with communication and, like with economic development, to be able to have someone, and I might as well admit it, our current mayor who is sitting here because we're talking about him, who can attend things like economic development and retail conventions and can work with Mid-America Regional Council. That is a wonderful contribution to the grand direction of the city. So they do play a role. I'm not marginalizing entirely, but when we if we want to get really economically specific, it is the rules and policies of our city manager what our staff does, the ordinances we pass, our debt service levy, whether we do bonds, it's our park commission. I mean, there are a lot of reasons where rooftops and businesses come in. And the sad thing is the more I'm a city councilman, the more I realize how little I really contribute individually. You know, I mean, thankfully I get to play with a good team and we do some good stuff. On the other hand, I've served enough on this council where I've served with a mayor who suffered a physical ailment and was not a strong contributor for an entire calendar year. And there was some limitation. I mean, the city still operated and the mayor did make contributions, but not nearly as before the physical ailment. And so if you set the number too long, then you could run a situation where either by a situation not by choice, for example, physical ailment, or if you have just a non-committed mayor who just bothers to not do anything by choice, you got a whole extra year before you can get rid of them. So the problem is when things are good, let's go long. When things are short, or bad, let's go short. I'm not sure which one. I think, Ms. Shittum, I think you bring up good things. I'll pull back the whole issue of the falling what cycle to just say, I'm not sure whether it would be better to shrink or expand. That's why I'd rather just leave it. My position would be leave it as is. Don't tamper it if it's not broken. But sometimes it can be broken. Mr. Burke?
My first thought to go with that idea was to say, well, if we were gonna extend the terms for the mayor, we would extend the terms for council a year. So we still had that odd, even mix. But I think
What
that's.
does that benefit? I'm sorry, tell me how that benefits.
It's exactly how it benefits right now with the 2 to 3, with it being the off-cycle elections. You can't have the same group of people ride together in every election. 4 council members, 1 mayor, and then 4 council members, 1 mayor. And then they would have a lockstep if they were able to do that.
Okay, how does that outside of the governing body and community, how does that benefit the citizens? How does that benefit the community?
It's been in place since
I'm
we've had
just
a
asking,
charter.
but how does it benefit?
How has it been a detriment?
I'm not saying it has,
So why would we change something that hasn't been a detriment?
because just because something is doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so let's not do well, I said not to, but I'm fine because I thought there were substantive exchange there. But so let me take control and throw both points up for discussion. There's valid to both with what was just said. We need a consensus. Right now, the existing consensus is a 3-year term. Is there enough merit? Because there's merit to the expansion discussion, but is there enough to make the change? And how do all of you feel about it?
I think we ought to leave it at 3. I just don't hear a compelling reason to move it. There are reasons, and they're valid reasons. I just feel, listening to the pros and the cons, I don't have a compelling reason why I could vote not to keep it at 3 years.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
I'm having a problem with it. The print is so small that I'm having trouble finding anything out on that. Can we enlarge the print just a little bit? so
Well,
we
I'll
can
help you
have-
out, Ms. Schubach. The issue we're debating is not on this list. So it's not, the print is not small regarding this topic. But I tell you what, for future meetings, we can definitely produce an enlarged. I think it was somewhat shrunk just to be efficient with the use of paper and not having 6 pages and, that kind of thing. So in future meetings, I think we can get larger print. On this particular topic, do you have an opinion?
Yes, I think we leave it at 3. I think that's the most important thing. If you're not gonna have term limits, then you need to make sure that the term is short. Because that way, if we find out we've made a mistake, we can do something about it.
Mr. Stowe?
I think 3 years is long enough, and he can see what, my hearing aid, or this is coming and going. I'm having trouble with it.
Okay, Mr. Stidham,
Yes, sir.
yeah, you look like you wanted to respond or
No,
make a point.
I'm just listening. I think I think the dialogue is good, and I think that, this is not a sword that we need to fall on. If the consensus is to leave it 3, let's leave it 3 and move on.
Well, respectfully, we have a little bit of a split here, and not to put anybody too on the spot, but I would at least want to give Mr. Wilson and Ms. Daring an opportunity if they wished to kind of add to the pot to see whether we lean in a direction or not. You're not required to, but if you would like to.
Well, I agree with Charlene, that, or Ms. Hewlett, that, the 3 is where we should stay, because what if we made a mistake in selecting somebody that wasn't good, and we want to replace that person? And since there are no term limits, then I think that 3 is a good way to stay.
I'm not opposed to a change in many areas, but I think 3 has been proven to be successful or acceptable in the past. I feel confident that my vote will be a 3.
Okay, I think I agree the debate's been very good on this. It was definitely valid to bring it up. I think that my straw poll counts enough that it would be pretty strong to stay the same. Unless somebody differs, let's go ahead and move on to 9.3. Okay, Ms. Schubach, you bring up something, you bring up an interesting point here. This has been something that you and I on the council have discussed and debated. We also did spend a meeting time discussing it here. I would like to propose something to you and offer you a compromise before we get too deep into the discussion. I believe, and I ask for anybody to correct me, one of the things mentioned here was that we speak about this issue at the charter level as well as the code level. Now, you and I have picked up that there's been some kind of almost contradiction at those two levels. So I would agree that we need to kind of harmonize our language. But 9.3 of the charter specifically says that the results shall be declared at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. So, since that meeting is at 7 o'clock on Monday night, I'm not sure when you talk about 2 meetings in one night, that's not relating to this. Because the result, all this says is declaration of election results. It doesn't allow, this section doesn't allow us to control what else gets discussed at that meeting, only that the election results are discussed at that regular scheduled meeting. Where we're seeing the conflict was not in the charter, it was in the code. Because the code talks about, we have a regular meeting at 7, and it's only for the sole purpose of 9.3, and then about half hour later, we do a special meeting, which semantically does the regular business. And I think even the council has pointed out that our regular meetings are at 7 o'clock, the charter says that. Technically, any meeting that does not occur at 7 o'clock on Monday is by definition a special meeting. And we can have 5, 10 special meetings in a day if we follow sunshine and we properly announce the agenda and the council wants to meet.
I
So,
think you're sticking in a gnat there. Where does it say that we have to meet at 7 o'clock? I've got the charter in front of me, where do I?
well, the staff will pull that up while we're discussing it. So I believe the issue that you wish to address can be appropriately and successfully addressed to your desire at the code level. But our charter level doesn't actually specify what you talk about.
No, well, let's see. Part of it does, and it was question, what was it, question 7 of the charter that the people voted on. Question 3. Question 7 is, shall section 9(3) of the charter be amended to clarify when newly elected officials are inducted into office? If passed, this would change a section of the charter shown below. And determination of election results, it says 9.3. It just says the first order of business at that meeting will be,
What is the date of that publication?
November 2008.
the what?
I was wondering what date that publication you're reading is.
Oh, that was
So it's on the front here, it's, for August.
the guide that we had on 2008,
August.
2008.
And that actually is not a binding or governing document.
The city of
That
Raymore.
that document has no authority. But the section, the language itself, and what, the change that we have in our changes, only changes the last three words to change at that time to by oath. But it says, the council shall declare the results of any municipal election, regular or special election, at the next regularly scheduled council meeting. It doesn't say what else can be discussed during that meeting, because the heading of that section is only limited to determination of election results. We have under section 3.13 subsection A, governing the council meetings. So that's a completely different section. So the issue you have on that particular election, or election results meeting, Ms. Hubach, actually will be addressed in the code. The charter still allows what you want without changing it.
That's, all I'm after is one meeting. I guess I'm saying in 12 years, I'm tired of calling a special meeting a regular meeting and a special meeting a regular, I mean, we're basically lying to ourselves when we say something is regular when it's special and something is special when it is regular. And all I'm asking for is that we just have one meeting, and that after the oath of office, that the mayor say we will recess, not adjourn, but we will recess for 30 minutes, and then we will come back and conduct the rest of our regular business.
And
That's
Ms.
all I'm
Hubach,
asking.
I respectfully am smiling only for the following reason. I welcome the fact that you can attend the codes meeting and express your views for them to take up at their meeting, because that's where it is to be resolved, not in ours.
It's in the code, not in the charter.
In the code, not the charter.
Okay, well, the code doesn't agree with the charter,
And that's why the code needs to be amended.
yes.
And that's why I strongly encourage that you meet with staff to get them to tell you when they're gonna meet and discuss this, so you can come and speak as a member of the public for that, to have that change.
Okay.
Totally agree with you.
We're-
Okay.
We're in agreement, as
We
long
can
as I
change
get
that
my
code.
hearing.
We will discuss.
If my hearing
to
aid
amend-
doesn't fail me.
We will discuss to amend that code at the codes meeting. Happy to do so. Mr. Wiggins.
I'm hoping for a little clarification. I'm looking at 313H
Okay?
here, and then whatever, half a dozen down, 44C. So 44C references 313H. 313H changes 14 days to replace it with 10 days. But then you go back to 44C, and it says 14 days of receipt as per 313H change, but the change is actually to 10 days. So is there some clarification that I'm not wrapping my head around, or does
Okay,
44C need to become 10 days to match 313H?
Help me out here, because that was very well put, and I apologize.
No
Okay,
problem.
So you say 3.13
313
sub H.
Correct.
Which
Effective,
we made that
effective
change.
date. Disapprove the same, or sorry, disapprove the same within strike 14, replaced with 10 days of receipt. Now go down one,
As
two.
provided by section 4.4C.
44C
But
says.
Which
Thanks
we
to them.
then, in our changes at 44C, references the 14-day change to be exact at 3.13H. So it would both go to 10 days.
Okay, so then shouldn't 44C here be referenced, that 14 days is stricken to be read 10 days of receipt as per the change 313H? I guess
I
that's
think
why
that's
I.
by implication, yes.
It's incorrect on this sheet.
Well, it's not with the ballot language, it would actually, there would be a ballot language item on there.
Our sheet references the 14-day change.
Well, I know, okay.
It doesn't say to 10 days,
But,
but it says per 3.3H change.
The item is marked on here as a ballot change item,
uh-huh,
but when we make your final report for you, we would have the appropriate wording for 44C to match the change in section.
okay, so both 313H will, that one we set to 10, and so 44C will match also to state 10.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just, because on here it said as per that, but up there it says something different than it says down there, so,
Right on.
thank you.
Good catch.
That was, yeah, good catch. No, he did a good job.
Deep catch.
Yeah, that was good. That was
Okay.
good.
What's our justification for this? We have to,
Uh-oh.
everything.
No. Ms. Hubach,
That was
not
a
yet,
special
not
meeting.
yet. I'm gonna allow you to pose that question, but I wanna transition to that. Okay, so we have taken the two new issues off the table and resolved them in some capacity. So we are now to the 25 changes that we, 26, that we have voted on. And now I will ask, so anybody can raise any specific issue, of these 26, they are right now, we have tentatively stated that these are changes that we wish to present to the city council. We have now removed adding any to it, so now the question is, do we agree with this in whole, or do we wish to remove any item? And we will limit discussion to just the removal of selected items.
I'd like to talk about it.
Oh, okay, so, thank you,
Recall.
Mr. Stidham. Let's go to 10.1C.
I think the 6 months was in there on each end for a reason, and I'm just not sure if we want to go tell someone. I think by rescinding the 6 months at the beginning, you're taking the voter's choice away within the first 6 months. And I'm not sure that I agree, well, I know I don't agree with that. At the end of it too, I think if you've got somebody, whether their term is up, expired, or they're coming up on the annual election, I think the end, you could justify that more unless it was dollars that would be spent for a special election.
May I offer a compromise, Mr. Stidham? I apologize if you wish to continue, I'll let you continue, but I would like to offer a compromise.
Okay, I was just gonna say, to me, the front end is more important than the back end.
And actually, Ryan Westcote, who is a resident of Ward 2 and a former city councilman, did come and speak on this particular issue. And he and I was the one that brought this up in the beginning. He had some exchanges with me. The irony is to fill in some additional factual information. Mr. Westcoat and I had to travel to an out-of-town conference. By the time we got to Bolivar, we had worked this out between us. So we call it the Bolivar Accord. But Mr. Westcoat did indicate further that his concern was the back end, not the front end change. The back end was because since a person would have at that point been in office over 3/4 of their term, because C is not a recall by the council, C is the voters recalling their own vote. So there's a different context there, that he felt that any discoverable issue would have already been discovered, and the citizens had the ability to either remove them deeper into their election cycle, or if you literally found something out at the last 6 months, you're really, by the time you could get something to put it on a ballot, you're putting it on the April ballot anyway, and the cost of having an election like 2 months before the standard election would just seem kind of unnecessary and a waste of money. And so that was what he asserted. He was willing to concede on the front end. The weight on the front end, where I wish to stress the point I made to him, was the problem with the recall is the citizens would have to ask for that. And if the citizens felt that there was any deception or misinformation that created the vote, the argument of the recall is to say, we were misled, that was a bad vote. It's like a motion to reconsider, like we would do in a normal hearing, using Robert's rules. That there does sometimes, some things get pushed through accidentally, and should the citizens be allowed to correct themselves, especially if new information rose, should you give an individual the ability to get into office for 6 months that maybe shouldn't, or who could do damage before the citizens could replace them. And so, and with an election in August, which is a traditional election cycle, beneath the 6 months, there actually is by law the ability that would have no technical additional cost to have it in August if you already had an election. It would be nominal to add just an extra inch or two in the newspaper, and that's it. You'd still have ballots. So I would actually propose myself, I'll make the motion since I was the one that moved it before, to change the amendment to 10.1C to remove the last 6 months and only keep the beginning 6 months.
Please say it one more
And
time.
that is a motion.
Please.
So if you turn to our page, our correction page,
Yes.
at the very bottom,
Mhm.
the line that is struck would be only, no elected official shall be subject to recall within 6 months after induction
Into office,
into office.
period.
So it would be, no elected official shall be subject to recall during the last 6 months of the official's term. So I guess I take that back. The word would be within 6 months after induction into office nor. That would be now the only thing that would be a change.
I am still confused.
Yeah, that just made it a little more
I'm
muddy.
still confused.
So you're
I want the ability to recall in the
Can-
first 6 months and leave the language.
Can I attempt
Yes,
to write on the?
please.
Some of us are visual.
Tell me what to write.
Well-
Tell me which parts to,
Put April election,
okay.
matter of fact, actually, would you like me to, since I'm.
Sure, since you know what you wanna write.
Before we do this,
That
can
would
we
be-
get a second
thank
to
you.
the motion?
That's true, we
Well, I
should not have
can't-
discussion yet.
How can we second something that I haven't
You
heard
can-
yet?
No, I made the
Oh.
motion, you can second for the sake of creating discussion.
well, but he's confused as to what your wording is, so he can't.
You
I
would
can't
second
second
the
it.
So
emotion,
you
the
would
motion.
second it, just so I could explain it.
I'm not willing to do that.
Okay,
Yeah, because I'm confused. You said one thing and then you said another, so I'm confused as to anything. So I can't support a motion because it's all a jumbled mess right now. Because you struck something and you're like, no, it was something else. So
Councilman,
yes,
may I make a suggestion?
yes.
You were gonna write what your proposed language was going to I think that'd be appropriate for them in order to be able to see the wording for the second.
In addition to
There you go.
hearing concerns.
Do you want to withdraw your motion, write it, and then make the motion that that's what I'm proposing?
I'm sorry. That's why I volunteered to write it.
Okay, I will withdraw the motion, but now we are at an open discussion.
Okay.
So technically, we don't have discussion. So it stays in as is. Unless now there's a motion to strike it in totality to then have discussion.
I just have a problem taking the vote away from the people. And I'll go back to a point that was made in a previous conversation tonight. How often has this happened in the past, and how often would we look or project for it to happen in the future? I get it that we have elections every year, so the opportunity for it to happen can happen. But it also, when we talk about a government of, by, and for the people, when the people decide, I just don't see, they're gonna be back up in 2 years. And really, there's gonna be more vetting on the Raymore community page than anybody would ever want, if they're a candidate or a voter. So I would, the front end to me is just take, if you allow that to happen, if you take that out of the way it is right now, you're taking the people's vote away.
And the counter to that is actually leaving it this way is taking away the voters' ability to vote. Because you're saying 12 months out of the 24, they can't vote.
So,
So you're doing the exact opposite. That's the problem with the language. This recall is the voters are asking for the right to vote for their representative. But this is a restriction saying the voters don't have the ability to vote for the first 6 months or the last 6 months.
Do they have the ability to vote for the first 6 months when they cast their vote?
Yes.
but,
So,
but
what
if somebody
they-
gets elected and 1 week later, you can't recall them for another 23 weeks.
If there's a mistake or a new issue that
You
arises.
have to suffer for the first 6
Wait
months.
6
That guy
months.
can sit around and twiddle his thumbs, or the last 6 months. So the idea of it was that if the voters find a reason to recall a council member within the first month, they can go ahead and do so based on striking the language. The current language says for the first 6 months you have to endure. And so you're taking away the power of the people by saying you're not allowed to do anything for 6 months. You have to let that person have their seat.
And
But-
again, there's gotta be a curve.
And there's pros and cons to it, because there's, what's the likelihood that somebody could, it'd be a lot of people, but, swaying the people. If you lost the election, how big of a group of people do you have that you could go in and try to recall somebody? Because I think that was what Mr. Westcoat was initially saying, is that a candidate who loses the next day could start a recall petition if we strike this language, because he's ticked off or she's ticked off that they lost, and could immediately go out and start hitting the streets and knocking on doors to start a recall petition on day 1. This prevents them from being able to do that.
One of the
So it's kind of
acknowledgements by Mr. Westcoat was, in actually playing out the scenario, you would actually have, you'd have to work harder to get the recall petition than just running for office. So actually, it doesn't make the losing candidate give them a second shot at the bullseye. They'd have had to work harder than when they did during the election. And that doesn't, that's not really realistic. Mr. Burke was first.
I would like to make an amendment that we simply change the numbers 6 to 3 in each instance. And keep the language, and I realize we voted against this, and we voted, and what we have here in front of us was voted upon. So I'm okay with no one agreeing with this. But this is another opportunity. No elected official shall be subject to recall within 3 months after induction, nor during the last 3 months of the official's term, which would give more time for voters to have votes. Or we could just leave it as is. That was a motion to change it to 3 months in each of the places where there are numbers. 3 months and 3 months. And there it is.
Just to frustrate the situation, I'll go ahead and second the motion, just to drive the issue home. But then I will make a motion to amend the motion to remove the last 3 months. So the only thing changed is the beginning.
May I amend my amendment to agree with that? To just,
You can second my
I will
amendment.
second that. I will
Okay.
second your amendment.
Okay, so we have 2 amendments. Any discussion on the amendment?
I didn't know where we're at.
Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the amendment of the motion?
Which,
The amendment removing the back half. The
Would you
back
like me to
3
write,
months.
I can write it on the board if you wish,
The amendment,
or I can restate
the
it.
amendment to the original motion.
Which
I-
would amend.
Which amends.
Which amends the amendment.
I'm trying
but
not
is,
to use
uh,
that language.
So,
So,
First Amendment.
I
What do
am,
we,
Can I
what do we tell
restate
the
it?
voters?
no, we are voting.
Okay.
All in favor of the amendment to Mr. Burke's motion, raise your hand.
do-
I need
Which
clarification.
Okay.
is to.
And I understand.
I was gonna say,
I totally understand that. You want me to read
Fair
my
enough,
initial
no.
amendment? Okay, well, it's
Because now
failed.
we have
It
a
failed.
motion and a second, I can now communicate on the board.
Okay.
Well, you gotta vote
For
for it.
discussion. I'm pulling that back because everybody wanted discussion. So if you are elected in 417,
Well, that doesn't show
it
up.
doesn't,
you can't see that?
There's black.
There's a glare.
That's better. The red's horrible. Don't ever use red.
Mr. Chairman, could we take a 5-minute recess? We're gonna be here for a while.
I saw this
March.
gentleman visibly
So-
intoxicated.
If
Had the coat all
may
up
have
in his
done
hand,
this
stumbled towards
time
the liquor
frame,
store. He goes into the liquor store.
they
talks
would
to
have
the person
already
at the counter.
declared
I can't
candidacy.
see into the
But in
store
this
other than I
one,
can
if the
see
recall is
from
done,
shoulders
they
up.
haven't
And a
even
few minutes
decided
later,
whether
he
they're
walks
running
out,
yet.
and he has a bag in his hand. Now, I'm representing
So
the liquor
once-
store.
You might
So my
find
cross-examination
that
is, well, couldn't he could have had the bag in the
Where did we
liquor
go?
before
We
he
have
gets
it.
on my stand.
So I have.
that the
And
person
the
was
guy
being
goes, no, we
run.
couldn't have. And I said, nobody could have one in the
Because if it's
bag, and he
April,
goes, no.
you're not
And so as
gonna
I move into an
January,
exhibit, I reach into my suit coat, and I pull out a bag of alcohol, and I put it in front of the jury.
January, so February, March, April,
We're all
I
back.
guess, 3 months before the election. That's one of the reasons. What's the
Okay,
date
hold on.
usually?
Hold on.
Or, okay,
So,
sorry.
This
we
is
are,
like a sentence being
I am now reconvening the Charter Review Commission meeting.
Thank
So
you.
we are now official on the record. We have a motion and an amendment. We have not voted on the amendment, so we are in discussion. I was asked to put on the board to describe this, especially because it's hard to see on video camera. I show if someone is elected in April of 2017, under our current charter, the voter has no right to affect their member, or their representative for 6 months, according to this existing charter. If they wanted him out, if the person committed crimes, the guy walks into this building with a gun and shoots people, we cannot legally remove him under this by recall only. Then, at the back end, there's 6 months where the voters have no ability to control their representative for 6 months. So, since there is a 2-year window there and 6 months on each, theoretically, 50% of the time, the voters have no ability to change their representative by recall. Now, the proposal is by Mr. Burke, is to decrease the 6-month windows down to 3. The amendment to that motion is to remove the back 3, because my initial motion was on either 6 or 3 months, and Mr. Westcoat's recommendation was to remove those from the back end. That is where we are at.
So at month 23, we could still recall, but at month 1, 2, or 3, we cannot, based on the proposal that you were suggesting. So basically months 4 through 24. Sorry.
As firm as I have been, I have suddenly realized, no, I'm leaving the back end in. Because Mr. Westcoat, in our discussion, and I agree with him, I don't want an election I don't want an election the first Tuesday in January, right after New Year's, because of that 3-month window. I wanna go ahead because we already have people who have declared to be on the April ballot in
That's exactly
December. Therefore, we're already in the process to potentially vote and replace a council member. So the immunity period should stay on the back end. The front end is what I'm asking for. The front end is, I wanna be able to say, if the voters made a mistake and they wanted at their request to change their representative, they have the right, should not have to wait. Sorry, so it's the front end which I wish to remove, not the back end.
Makes sense to
Holy
me.
cow, okay, so now it's
Mr. Burton.
When a prospective candidate, any citizen, declares candidacy and pays the fee with the city clerk, is that 3 months or 4 months before the election? I cannot remember.
4.
Okay, so it's December, not
About
January?
3.5, almost 4.
Filing begins in December.
Okay.
December.
All right. That's part of my thinking about the end. A person that is probably facing discord in the community probably would not run in this back end for the next election. But of course they certainly have the right to do so. Anyone does. But if there was a fervor for a recall at the end,
The concern that I agree with Mr. Westcoat is maintaining the back end, because we don't want to try to shove elections on voters when they were already scheduled to have one pretty quick anyway. And if somebody was going to be recalled, they would have been conduct earlier, or where they were misled when they voted, not 18 months into a term.
so your amendment was to strike which of these two? Is it
That
strike
one.
this one?
Yes.
So the amendment is to strike this second amendment.
So you want 0 and 3 or 0 and 6?
I was fine with 0 and 6, but nobody seconded that motion and they made it more restrictive. But we at least have a motion and a second on the 0 and 3.
It doesn't seem to me like it makes there's any point in doing it the last 3 months, because they've already filed, the newcomers are filed, and the recalling person is filed, and the people are going to vote in 3 months' time, which would be exactly the same as what it would take if they were doing a recall. So I think that you're right, eliminate that last one, but make sure that you've got it at the front.
The reason why it was 6 months in the existing charter is because within about 2 weeks of that 6-month window is the standard November general elections. So if that would be something that would be routine, that you would already have the ability to have an election for without incurring any abnormal cost. Does staff have an opinion or wish to make a comment?
Staff's only question is going to be to the city attorney, are we voting backwards, or are we voting backwards? On 2 votes, or are we voting on 1 vote? And if we're gonna vote on 1 vote, it would seem to me that the motion by Commissioner Burke needs to amend his initial motion to come into line with your proposed,
That would be
if there's gonna be 1 vote. Otherwise, there has to be a vote on your amendment to the motion, and then
Respectfully, I'm purposely being antagonistic, I'll go ahead and say that, but I understand what you're saying. We have 3 layers of issue we have to get through. Technically, we could have mine pulled back, and I would have to remove my amendment to his amendment, so then he could amend his amendment and do it in 1 instead of 2.
That's correct.
Mr. Burke.
And I will admit, the first time that we had this vote, we did vote on it, and it was decided then, and I believe I was on the losing side, and I would be okay with remaining on the losing side, because this commission did vote on it, and so I could see people saying, well, there's no reason to have this vote at all.
I think-
And I do understand that.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mr.
I think we voted to put it on here for discussion tonight is what we voted on.
Okay, that's true.
Yes, we didn't actually vote to give it to the council. We voted to put it on this chart.
So, you be on the losing side again?
Yeah. Okay,
So you want to withdraw and allow him to amend?
you know, I'm still contemplating that, a part of me wishes to be antagonistic, but, for the sake of trying to get past some of this confusion, I will go ahead and withdraw my motion in the hope that Mr. Burke amends his motion, which he does not legally have to do. So I am removing my motion,
Which was?
which was
So you're removing this one?
which was to remove the red X. You can go ahead and erase it because the black's almost half permanent.
Oh, all right.
Just
That's
erase.
close enough.
So the only motion on the table right now is what you see with the underlined green, unless Mr. Burke is willing to amend.
I feel more strongly about the first 3 months than the last 3 months,
As far as
proposing.
removing it
As proposed,
or leaving it in.
as to having it say, no elected official shall be subject to recall within 3 months after induction into office. That part, I feel more strongly about than the last part, which you obviously disagree with, and that's fine.
No.
And that's fine, but
So you
this
wanna
has
keep-
provided me.
You wanna keep the initial indemnity period of 3 months in the beginning.
Yes. And so
Okay.
I will amend mine, and I know that's not
No,
what
you
you.
don't amend.
I don't
You
need to,
just
I
said
don't.
you don't amend.
Yeah, I don't, well, I don't.
Okay, I will try to keep some
No one has to
stability
agree
here.
with me.
Okay,
And
so, that is what you are voting on, to remove the language that we have in our chart from the 6 months going away to 3 months. So instead of the full language change on line 10.1C, you are removing the underlined portion. The underlined portion now goes away, it's no longer underlined. That language comes back in, and the only change would be, instead of 6, it would go to the word 3 and the number 3.
Correct,
The first one, I mean.
on both.
On both.
Was my
On both
amendments.
Both of them?
His,
That's what I said on, that's what I.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was the motion.
There's always room.
Please don't do that to me, Mr. Sir. No, because if you encourage me, I will make 5 motions just to mess with this, but okay. So, that's what we have, a motion and a second. Any discussion?
who seconded it?
I
He did, to provide
Because I
discussion.
wanted to be able to put it up on the board.
Call vote.
Okay, since hearing no discussion, all in favor of Mr. Burke's motion? 1 in favor, all opposed? Okay, the motion fails, we are back to the 6 months.
No, we're back to everything being completely stricken.
No.
Yes.
His motion was just to change the 6 to 3, but the language in the yellow sheet now is where we stand. So now I will make a motion to put back in the back 6 months to be consistent with the language in our existing charter, and only make an amendment to the first 6 months.
Here.
No, that's what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Use paper towel, not. So your motion is to remove the first 6 months, but reintroduce the back 6 months, because we had
Yes.
previously voted on.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm wanting to reduce the change. So if you read our sheet, our yellow sheet, there's one sentence completely crossed out. I am now suggesting you only remove, the only thing with the underline is within 6 months after induction into office, nor. The rest of it stay consistent.
I
What?
will second that motion.
Okay? Now discussion. Mr. Burke,
Can you repeat what you felt that you discovered with your extensive conversation about this with Mr. Westcoat? About the recall election being harder to do for a candidate that has just lost an election to get the, is it?
Yes.
You're saying it's harder to get the petition
the
together?
the dilemma, if you look at the practical application of how we typically vote, that we have registered voters here, and the recall election would be based upon two considerations, either council ward or the mayor's entire ward makeup. So for example, Ward 2 would just be precincts 32 and 33, for if it were a Ward 2 member being recalled, or if it's the mayor, it's all 7. So the discussion was that many times we have people elected to the council with roughly 8% of the vote. So the people that show up on Tuesday of that April, 8% of the registered voters show up. That's who voted to pick the person. If there is a issue of concern that rises so great that the requirements for recall and the number of people, which is a recall petition signed by at least 30% of the total number of the qualified registered voters, says technically you've got 4 times the number of people who vote say we screwed up, and that just allows it to go back for the people to then rediscuss on their own and vote. So at no time does the council do anything. This is the voters choosing to exercise their rights.
Thank you.
And so in the beginning, there could be a mistake because it's so new and the person has only filed with Ms. Warner as much as 1 day before the filing deadline or all the way back to the first one around the middle of December. If there is information that has not been presented, so there was misrepresentation by omission, or let's say on a website, somebody, or a Facebook page, somebody goes out and spreads something that was false or slanderous, and a person is damaged, the community goes, oh my God, we were lied to. How can the person that's the victim of a lie receive any justice? No, they have to wait 1/2 of a term, or 1/4 of the term to let the violator do what they want to do before they could even begin to get them out.
All right.
So I'm saying that there is at least a discussable argument for giving the voters back the ability to correct a wrong in the beginning. Now, at the end, I agree. After 3/4 of the time, you kind of knew if the person was going to be bad or not, or have issues. And even if you just suddenly discovered something, person walks outside and kills her spouse, we don't want a murderer sitting up on the dais. if they've already started registration for the new election, why spend thousands of dollars when you could just take care of it later? And by the way, in that situation,
meant to say it,
the
Mr.
council
Mayor.
has the ability to temporarily put them off the dais.
Well, it's been my experience, I have worked on a recall for the mayor, and it is a lot of work. And he was pretty much a renegade, and I was personally threatened by him, and
It's difficult.
it's pretty difficult. I mean, just getting all the signatures, you have to, you're keep trying to get them counted, you're getting them down to the county seat, keeping count of how many you've got, how many people voted, keeping your tallies. People are working as hard as they can, and then you finally meet, and he's up there on the dais, and you finally, you get up there and you tell him you have been recalled, you know. It's ugly. You know,
And it's not easy, and the thing that
It
Mr.
is.
Westcoat did acknowledge was, he goes, I might have been a little off the cuff when I said, well, somebody loses on Tuesday, so Wednesday they decide to just fight. No, the amount of effort that they would have to expend is actually probably greater than all the effort that they put in to just lose the election, which meant, hey, maybe you should have just done better the first time. And if you can't run and win the first time, you're probably not gonna get the recall level.
it's so much work.
But if we have a person who is elected, who truly, I mean, and you, as you could tell, it truly takes a very severe wrong by the elected person to have the citizens turn on them like that, that would, I believe, justify the right of the voters to want to do their will. If they're willing to work for it
It was
and
so bad.
to correct what they believe is a wrong, they should be allowed to.
That only applies to the city of Raymore, doesn't apply to the county.
That's
right?
correct. Ms. Hubach, very rarely do I scold you, but I will say, please, let's not have a discussion outside of this, outside of our jurisdiction of this.
Okay.
I respect your opinions, but that one,
I just wanted to make
you were
sure.
being playful, but I'll be playful back. No, let's stick to the point.
Okay, I agree with you.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second, no discussion, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, so our correction sheet will be adjusted to make the change that I had mentioned to decrease the the change. Okay, any other discussions on the 26 items? I'm going to take the silence to mean something here, but I will make the following comment in light of where we are at. This is our last regularly scheduled meeting based on our own definition of meeting times before we present this list to the city council on June 19th, 2017 for the November election in accordance with our governing resolution.
Do we have to have
This
our
is item
justification
16.
in line first?
Well, that is something that can be created. There is some justification actually put on this suggestion form. That will have to be polished up, which we would hope that staff would assist with, and then it will have to be presented. Based on the fact that I've heard nothing more, that means by implication, this is the list we will be presenting to the city council in total. Does anybody wish to dispute that or wish to make any amendments?
Are we still in kind of conflict without breaking ties, where it says on definitions and all, that it has to be 5 out of the 8 council members have to approve a contract?
Our recommendation on item 1.2 properly defines that, Ms. Hubach.
Okay. So we'll have a chance to read it all over with before we send it in to the council.
No, we are reading it and dealing with
This
this
is it now.
tonight. If you do not speak, once I close this, we're done. We are,
I
at
don't
some
know
point,
that.
we're ending.
It says 5 of 8, it's spelled out.
So,
It does. Whenever an action under this charter requires the vote of the entire council, this shall mean a vote of at least 5, number 5, of 8, number 8, council members. In the event of a 4-4 tie of the 8, the mayor may vote to break the tie in accordance with with 8. In accordance with 8, section.
8 should be removed, actually, that's a.
In accordance with section 4-4 of the chart.
Yeah.
So right here, it says 5
Yes,
of
that's
8.
just a typo.
5 of the 8, okay, I
Yep.
wanted to make sure
Yes.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
Because if it has to be 5 of the 8, what point is there in the mayor trying to make a tie?
It,
Only on a
only
4-4.
only on a 4-4 tie does the mayor break.
Okay,
Because there wasn't five.
So we'll still do the same thing that we did before, somebody will abstain in order to make sure that the mayor does not have a tie to break.
Ms.
That's what
Hubach,
they do now.
that is, respectfully, is a very pragmatic way of looking at that. That's not necessarily that council members will seek to do that. We would hope they would not do that, but we are honoring the spirit that council members will be faithful to the oath that they give. And I know you would want them to. Okay,
You're assuming.
yes, I am. Okay, again, I'm being very, I'm giving all the caveats I need to give. Are we done? Are we passing along these 26 as we have? Unless, because I'm kind of like the auctioneer, going once, going twice
When will we be meeting with them?
on June 17th.
June
19.
19 is what you said the
19th,
first
I
time.
apologize, 2017, sorry.
June 19th at 7 o'clock.
They have to sign the final order.
June
Come
18th.
together just to get their signatures.
Actually, yes, we had talked about there was a meeting time. What was the date of that prior to?
This would be just the simplicity of the administrative matter of presenting it to them a week in advance to check for grammatical errors, et cetera. There would be no change to the wording of the ballot language that they've seen tonight.
So do we want to
And then
do
just
next
sign
Tuesday?
the page. We need to get to where the staff needs to put the report together for you and write it.
The following Tuesday after that?
What would be the normal Tuesday that they would be meeting?
Would be June the 6th.
Maybe that's good. June the 6th, sir?
Yes, I will go ahead and ask permission, can we meet on Tuesday, June 6th, for the limited purpose of doing a final approval of this?
If we can't make it here, can we stop by and sign the document?
I think you're thinking about having a meeting, an actual meeting to come together, here's the language, not
Well,
changing
they'll have
language.
this a week in advance.
Right, so there'd be an actual agenda that would have this attached with it as part of that agenda that you would approve.
So
the
we
final
would have
form.
this in advance for us to review and bring back.
And you
Okay,
have your meeting in order to say if there are any changes outside of the ballot language.
then the meeting will be scheduled for June 6th at 6 PM as a normal meeting of ours. But if you have changes, you will review those ahead of time and submit those at or prior to the meeting so we can then incorporate those in. So if a member cannot be there, please get your changes to the commission, submit them to Ms. Warner prior to that meeting.
Changes.
The changes
Typos.
would not be, there's justification
Oh,
language
I
in
see.
here of
Okay.
how you
Okay.
met.
All right.
It wouldn't be the ballot language.
Right.
So everything in yellow as of 5 minutes from now is done.
We're done.
So I think that's what Mr. Stidham, is that, maybe that clarifies it for him, is so in 5 minutes, nothing in yellow can be changed again. It gives us the opportunity to read the, here's, yes, a typo,
final
but here is
polished.
the, how it's going to potentially, be presented, fancy schmancy.
Right. The document itself has things like the history of the commission, when you all met, data relative to the meetings, and then it, obviously, the recommended changes to
Tim,
the charter.
it's this that
But
was,
it would be that, it would be the ancillary language. This one had an in memoriam in it of, so it would be all of that ancillary stuff we'd be looking at, just to make sure we put it together in the form you all
Okay, so we're having a brief meeting on June 6th. So this is now officially closed. We're moving past new business. There will be no more new business. Under status update, we've resolved the issue of our next meeting on June 6th. There's only one other issue I'd like to discuss as other prior to the June 6th meeting. We have the subjective choice to have who presents this to the city council. Now, technically, I and Mr. Burke are on that council, and so I actually feel it would be more appropriate, or I'd feel very comfortable, if one of you were the ones that presented this and spoke on it.
How about our vice chairman?
Ms. Daring would be the logical first choice, but I did not want to be disrespectful to anybody. We've been very good. Obviously, I'm comfortable with that, but I also want to say I've enjoyed working with all of you and would not decline any one of you. I just wanted the group to be able to do it.
Is that lobbing a softball out there? That's like,
Maybe
somebody else will
Do we
Maybe somebody
have
else wants to do it.
volunteer, or should we make nominations?
question.
Just throw out a name.
No, literally a question.
Yes.
Presenting the packet, so the packet that we got that was referencing the 10-year ago version, it's presenting that, but not necessarily reading it word for word, but it's answering questions of why we thought, I'm just curious what the presentation entails.
What I believe will occur is they will produce that hard copy. That will be placed on the agenda on the June 19th meeting, and the copy of that will be included in the council packet for their review prior to the meeting.
Right.
The member, Ms. Daring, if that's who is chosen, will merely, when that comes up for discussion, she can approach and ceremonially present that to Ms. Warner, but technically the council already has a copy of it, and then the council will discuss it after the staff report, and they will either amend, accept in full, amend, or reject all of it, technically.
So they don't have to stand up and say these are the 26, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and here's why. It's more of a
Can
ceremonial.
they be grilled by the
But
council?
there can be when whoever the representative goes up, if a council member has a question, it would be appropriate for that person to remain at the dais to answer a question. I would expect a couple of questions, actually. I mean, it's not unheard of, because somebody may go, I don't understand what you guys are trying to do there. I don't understand the rationale that has been put in there. And that could be expected. Now, technically, Mr. Burke and I are on the dais, so we could also offer comments. So I wouldn't want the person representative at the dais or at the podium to feel like they're sandbagging by themselves. Yes, exactly. But I would defer to allow that person to speak as our representative first, unless they said, could you help? Again, I just want to make sure, look, guys, and I'm sorry, I'm getting tired, and it's not you guys. I've really enjoyed this process. I've liked working with every single one of you guys. I've enjoyed even when I've gotten mildly frustrated, because none of this is personal to me, because I like what we're doing. And everybody's made good points. Nobody's been bad at this group at all. I want to make sure when we go before that city council, that whatever we do, we represent the value that we've been representing in here. I want to make sure we finish strong and cross the finish line strong. So that's all I wanted to represent here. Because I don't believe the council will reject a lot of this. They may have a point with an issue or two, and that's their prerogative. But I think in general, the council's gonna give us the initial assumption, especially because they know how much time we've spent on this. And so I don't think anybody's gonna go, the ballot might be too long, let's cut. That's not what's gonna happen. Yes, Mr. Fearwell.
The intention is, so you all know the calendar after you present, you're presenting at the second work session of June to the city council. It would be staff's intention that this be on.
Was it a work session?
Yeah, it's a work
So
session.
it's even easier
Yes.
to present.
So it would be staff's intention to take the lead from the council. The last time the council accepted it, formally thanked the commission, the mayor then has to so it was staff's intention that this would actually be on not only at the presentation work session, but then there were 2 work sessions in July before the formal meeting where they put it on the ballot, which is the 2 meetings, hopefully the last meeting in July after that second work session, and the first regular meeting of August are the 2 readings of what the council is gonna put on. And then August 28th, we filed this thing for the November elections. That would be our ideal.
So whoever is gonna be our representative now gets stuck doing 3 meetings, not just 1. So maybe you don't want to.
Question of staff, if I may. The 31st of July, the council's been pretty hitting everything every Monday for quite a while, with very few exceptions. Will the 31st, in your opinion, be a meeting?
Absolutely, sir.
That's what I thought.
The
All right.
31st of May?
31st of July, which is the
There's-
5th.
I believe there's.
Oh, the
Yeah,
31st of
5th.
July.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
July.
That's not a holiday.
I
We're
mean,
getting off
we have
more
been,
of
for the last couple of years, meeting almost every single 5th.
Unless it's a
Monday.
holiday.
Unless it's a holiday.
Unless it's a
Okay.
holiday.
Holiday
because
the
it didn't-
24th, so that
Yeah.
really, the
Miss-
31st.
Even though
Ms.
it's,
Schubach.
I just wanna bring it up, because there's nothing I think we can do to change it. But when the charter commission was chosen, there says in there, the council will choose 8 of them, and the 9th one will be chosen by the mayor. When we met, the mayor says, and now here is my 9th amendment, and I'm saying, whoa, you can't do that, because we haven't chosen the 8 yet. You have to choose 8 before you can choose 9.
Ms. Schubach, I will respectfully stop you. That is a discussion as a council member on a sole council decision that is based on the resolution. We have no authority to discuss or address that issue.
But I'm asking, should we have that?
No,
Okay, that's all I
No.
need to know.
it's all left to the council. We did address it, actually. We looked at that section and we said the council will create its resolution. The council did, and we discussed what we wanted in it, and that's what we put in it, and that's how it was carried out. So we are, now it's no longer in our hands, so we have no ability to do anything about it. Okay, with that, I will look at public comment, and with the mayor coming in, since he is technically public, if he wishes to comment.
Over to that portion.
Oh, we should erase what we changed about mayor duties before.
Well, do we have a spokesman or? does
Oh,
it-
yes, we do
Oh,
need a
yeah,
spokesperson.
that's true.
Who wishes to be the one to present to the council?
I think she should.
Okay, we have a recommendation of Ms. Daring. Any other recommendations?
I mean, I don't wanna step on anybody's plate if they wanna step up and do it.
I think
Mark.
if you're comfortable doing it, I would be comfortable with you doing it for us. My personal opinion.
Exactly what I was gonna say. My opinion as well.
All right, it looks pretty unanimous, but I'll go ahead and officially make a vote. Who will be the actual commission member who will formally present to the council as Ms. Daring? All in favor? All opposed? Abstain? You gotta vote, you abstain or?
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, I'll count that as an affirmative vote though.
Yeah, really.
So it is
Unanimous.
unanimous.
What was
Thank you very much. I beg your pardon?
What will the role of you 2 council members be?
They're
Since
gonna
you're
coach-
also
they're gonna
on-
coach
You're gonna be on the council.
On a
No,
daily basis, yeah. Ms. Schubach, respectfully, this commission is still an active commission until we have resolved our last duty. And that last duty will take place in July.
Correct.
So, because technically the council, even voting on this, has the ability to ask us questions. So, once we get past that vote in July, then there will be an expressed act by the mayor, I don't think abolish is the proper word.
Dismissing the commission.
Dismissing the commission is the appropriate, and that's when we cease to perform our duties. There you go.
I'm ready.
Okay,
ready.
last
I think-
step is motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion,
Second.
a move and second, all in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you very much.
Yeah, they